welcome to CEC Gurukul lecture. In the discussion on the theories of social inequality, in last lecture we talked about Marxian theory. The core argument in today's theory would be to understand Max Weber's theory of inequality, where he discusses the inevitability of inequality. So we will try to understand the theories of social inequality and the way these theories, concepts helps us to make sense of inequality in modern society. So to begin with, most of us are familiar with a sociologist named Max Weber. He is a German sociologist whose writings spanned the later years of 19th century and early years of 20th century. He was writing almost much years after Karl Marx, but he is considered along with Marx as an important contributor of sociological theory. Rather, for those who are students of sociology, we know that Max Weber brings about a turn in methodology with his first-hand sociology. But here we will just limit our understanding to how Weber developed a different theory to social inequality in addition to what Marx had talked about with reference to class and economic basis of inequality. So Weber's approach to social stratification and inequality is built on Marx's analysis. But Weber went beyond Marxian model, modifying it and elaborating it. One of the major or the most outwards distinction that we as students are familiar with is that Marx's view of stratification is unidimensional. Uni means there is a single dimension to inequality, and the single dimension for understanding inequality according to Karl Marx was the material basis of production. So basically it is an economic foundation or the economic interpretation of the social history. When we come to Weber, Weber adds more dimensions to the concept of inequality and stratification, and therefore his theory is three-dimensional. Three-dimensional in the sense that it is referred as class, status and party. Now class is the economic dimension, status is the social dimension and party is the political dimension. So he says that inequality in society is not necessarily coming in from your economic condition. It is at the same time related to your prestige, to the status and political power that one holds. So he considered economic class or the basis of your income and occupation as one of the three dimensions of social inequality. Now we kind of look into class, it is not only based on your relations to means of production. So when we look into Karl Marx says the class is determined on the position in the means of production. In very simple word, those who are owners of the means of production and those who do not own. But here Weber is saying that it is not only on whether you are owning a means of production. There are other players as well when we look into the economy. So even if you are not owning, you might be the kind of involved in a larger way to affect the production process. Therefore, the class is not solely dependent on the ownership of production. So in addition to the hierarchy based on economic factor, according to Weber, there is a hierarchy which is based on status and political power. Now let us look at each of these three dimensions separately to have a more holistic understanding of Weber's theory of social inequality. So the first dimension is class, and as we already said that Weber expanded on Marxian concept of class. Marx primarily saw class based on one's role in production. So you are either a worker or you are a owner. Weber added more dimension, and what are these dimensions? These dimensions are skills, education and profession. All these play important role in the formation of a class. Here he gives an example of a doctor and a custodian. Both work in a hospital, but their class position differ. due to their skills and income. Many a time we'll see that the income may be more or less the same, and the source of income is also different, but the status an individual occupies in a society is different. Why? Because it's not only a economic means, it is kind of doing more. So if we kind of look into someone who is working as a teacher or an educator, kind of tends to have a higher prestige. Many a time the social status is also dependent on the cultural value of a particular society. So along with economic dimension comes in the cultural specificity, norms, values, skills, educations. And in that sense, a class comprises, according to Weber, those who stand in similar position with regard to their opportunities to acquire society's economic reward, and that he terms as life chances. So along with your economic situation, it is your life chances which is enabling you to utilize the economic resources to improve your status in society. Marx conceptualized class as one position in the productive process. Weber emphasized that even within the owning class, there are distinctions based on how they acquire income, and even the owner is a class cannot be a homogeneous, because it will again then depend on how much you own, what source are you becoming an owner. You could kind of own a means of production by actually working hard, or you could appropriate someone else's wealth. So there are distinction in terms of the category of owning class as well. In a sense, Weber's idea of class considers occupation, skills, property ownership as factors that determines one's life chances and social class. So if you are born, say, into a property owner group which is trying to impart you a more important skills, you are able to improve your life chances, this class kind of will be dependent on it. So Weber's notion of class is more complicated than that of Marx's idea or Marx's theory. So Marx is kind of giving us a very simplistic theory that either you own capital or you don't own capital, whereas Weber is adding life chances, productive process, skills, expertise and other variables to ensure the class in position. Max Weber introduced the idea of the second idea which comes in along with the class is your status. This idea helps us to understand the concept of inequality beyond income and occupation. So status refers to the prestige or lifestyle associated with a particular group, not purely from an economic factor. So status is completely your prestige or your ranking in the society. So in a very commonsensical, we know that if there is a person who is doing robbery or is kind of a criminal, people do not attach a high status despite the fact that the person might be having a lot of economic wealth. So your position is not necessarily all dependent on your economic earnings. The status dimension consists of groups that display a particular lifestyle and that are aware of the differences between themselves and other status groups. So, you know, it's kind of a group whose lifestyle is similar. So, people who would prefer to go to, say, malls for shopping and not go to the local market, go to 5-star restaurants for their dining. And so, there is a kind of a lifestyle which makes them distinct from other group. And again we see when we talk about status, we see that there are several occupational group which will have the same income. So, for example, say a teacher and a truck driver, they may have the same income, but their social status differs. And on what basis does this differ? It differs due to the perceived prestige of their profession, and this comes in from the cultural value. So, in a society, say take our own Indian society, education is valued. So, if you have become an educator or a teacher, you are given more status, you have hold a higher prestige compared to say an unskilled or anyone who is kind of beyond having acquired that educational status. So, status is important along with class. Why? Because it influences how people consume and live their life. So, wealth is only one dimension. So, you have a lot of wealth, but if you will have a particular pattern in which that wealth is consumed, and that consumption will create a taste, and that is what is more significant. So, people with similar lifestyle, similar taste, according to Weber, are referred as status communities. It becomes like a community because they all have the similar prestige, they have the similar lifestyle, they have a similar kind of consumption pattern. Status can be more significant in some societies or situation. Say if we go back to the traditional society where we had this status dependent on the caste system, or where we had ethnic and gender differences. So, if we look into these status situation, then many a time status does not depend on your income or your economic position. Say for instance, for gender relation, it is irrespective of whether the women is kind of earning a high income. If it's a patriarchal society, if there is a kind of male dominance, then women's status will remain subordinate. So, there is a kind of distinction between the class and status. So, what is this difference between class and status? They are two related to each other, because if you have wealth, you are in a position to improve your status. However, they are not the same. Classes are stratified according to their relation in production and acquisition of goods, whereas status groups are stratified according to the principles of their consumption of goods and represented by their lifestyle. Weber pointed out that status and class are not necessarily unrelated. To enjoy a particular lifestyle necessitates a certain economic standing. So, only those who if we talk about status community and we look into the residence or the property price which is increasing, is because you have a certain amount of income to invest. You are investing in areas which are occupied by status community. So, the value increases. Therefore, the consumption pattern is dependent on your income. Any style of life will be based to a large extent on your occupation and income. Those who enjoy similar social status have more or less similar economic income. However, there are exceptions to this. As we already discussed, it could be the case of a truck driver and a school teacher, or the exception also works when we talk about class inequality, caste inequality, gender, ethnicity. The status is not at all dependent on your economic position. Now, if we talk about class and we say that class can give you a status, then what is the importance of status? Now, if we look into this concept of status or prestige, which is used synonymously, it is important. And why is it important? It is important for the analysis of social inequality because it elucidates the complexities of modern stratification system. Again, going back to the same example of a truck driver and a school teacher who may earn the same. However, due to difference in skills, education and training, their social status is different, and that is the significance of status. That will help us to get more trained. Why do we need to acquire more education? One of the reason is to ensure that we have a good status in society. So, the more the complicated the structures of societies are becoming, status becomes relevant in terms of understanding these forms of multiple inequality. Not only are these two cases of the truck driver and school teacher differentiated in terms of the prestige, they also consume differently. That is, they enjoy different lifestyle. Their preference in music, entertainment, fashion, food, etc. are all different. And this we can understand when we read Piri Bourdieu's book Distinction, where he talks about the taste being kind of different in terms of different status group. Now, when we talk about status communities, we see that their different lifestyle of these different status groups leads to the formation of status communities, each make up of people who have similar cultural and social interest and common consumption pattern. People usually associate with others who have same social and cultural taste, live in same neighborhood and probably marry people of similar taste. Status communities are closed groups and founded on social characteristics other than lifestyle. In multi-ethnic societies, people's social prestige is to a large extent dependent on their ethnicity. The third dimension of social inequality, according to Weber, is party. Now, we know party is kind of referring to political parties, and therefore, the term party refers to political rank or influence in groups aiming to acquire social power through political action. This could include formal political organizations like the political party, as well as any large collective which kind of works to influence the power structure. And these could be like labor union, consumer groups, and professional business groups. It highlights that people or groups can politically influence even if they aren't part of the top social class or status group. So, that is important, and that is why we see the role of labor union. Though they are not owners of property, they are not even on a higher status, but because of the collectivity, they can influence, they are powerful to ensure that the organization works in according to the laws. Then we also can talk about political parties, where for instance politicians may come from ordinary background in terms of wealth and prestige, but because of they say ethnic background or caste background are able to acquire influential position in the political parties. When we look into the three dimensions, it is important to understand the third dimension for Weber, because Weber talks about modern society and he talks about bureaucracy, authority. So, his understanding or his theory on power is very important. And what is different from Marx is that Marx emphasized economic control. He said who is the ruling class according to Marx? Ruling class are those who have been able to acquire property, whereas Weber is not referring only to the economic modes of acquiring power. He will talk about the idea of those who are in power and authority by virtue of their skills and education, and that is where he is referring to the bureaucracy or a bureaucratic form of authority. He defined power as the ability to make others follow your will. In modern society, he argued that organizational power, particularly within bureaucracy, is most crucial. And that is why his argument about bureaucracy as representing the rational form of authority, that it is an organization where by the rule, the power is in the hands of those who are on the higher rank in the organization. So, bureaucracies are efficient, specialized structures used in large institutions like government or corporation. So, such organization may represent either class interest or status group interest or both. In addition to formal political organization, we have many forms of political power, or it could also be kind of referring to what Srinivas talks about dominant caste, where because you have been able to be in large numbers, you have economic strength, you are able to acquire political power as well. So, Weber responded to Marx by questioning the basis of ruling class power, whereas Marx saw the power of ruling class as deriving from its economic ascendance and control of resources. So, when we talk about the rational authority or rational form of power in modern society, we come to what is referred as bureaucracy. With the modernization of society, government leaders and executive of large business firms become more and more dependent on organizations made of specialists and experts to advise them and ultimately carry out crucial decisions. This type of social organization takes the form of bureaucracy. A bureaucratic organization enables vast number of people playing specialized role to blend into cohesive, well-functioning unit. It is a social machine. Bureaucracy in modern society is a machine which kind of ensures efficiency and speed. Along with bureaucracy, as we already said, Weber talks about authority, and he describes the kind of organizational and power of authority, and that is your ability due to your position in the organization to ensure that others adhere to your order. And societal power therefore also emanates not only from the production process but also from the control of administration. And he referred to three forms of authority: traditional, charismatic and rational. So, with this we have understood Weber's theory of social inequality in contrast to Marxian theory. He offers us a multidimensional approach and sees multiple sources of inequality in economy, in the social structure as well as in the products, in the political power, and at the same time understand exceptions in terms of race, ethnicity and gender. With this, I come to an end of this lecture. Thank you.